The reason therapy is vague and ineffective and embarrassing, quite frankly, is because psychology never recovered from the split between Freud and Jung, which sounds ridiculous, but therapy inherited that split. And until we understand exactly what Freud and Jung disagreed about, the field will continue to produce competing schools that produce competing explanations about what it means to grow psychologically. Until then, retard maxing will continue to be a legitimate strategy. Of course, Freud and Jung are more similar than they are different. They're not opposites. They're describing the same phenomenon from two different perspectives with a different emphasis. I mean, really, they're two sides of the same coin. And once you can see how those perspectives fit together, the entire field makes a lot more sense. And so what it takes to grow makes a lot more sense as well. Now, my bias here is I like Jung. Go download my notes on his collected works. Jung's theory explains more than Freud's does. I mean, really, Jung encapsulates Freud. But in that sense, Jung is the greatest Freudian. So yeah, get ready for some bias here. A good way to illustrate the difference between Jung and Freud is their approach to religion. Both saw religion as a fact. The disagreement was over what kind of fact it was, whether it was man-made or metaphysical. For Freud, religion was more arbitrary. People clearly had religious experiences, created religious ceremonies, organized societies around them, derived a lot of meaning from them. You know, Freud never denied that. What he denied was that these experiences could be valuable in the positive sense, that they could be anything other than a defense against reality. Freud argues that, yeah, religion emerged because we need things like group cohesion, order, and a father figure to allay our guilt imbued by evolution, guilt over killing our father. It's a long story. The point is, it's a defense against reality, not a path to it. Jung, however, thinks this explanation is too narrow or reductive. It's the genetic fallacy. It's just because a belief has psychological origins doesn't mean that it's false. You know, hunger explains why we need food, but it doesn't mean that the food isn't real or it doesn't provide any nutritional value. So why assume that because a symbol, a religious symbol, appears in the psyche, it's not a reflection of who we are or of something that can offer guidance in a meaningful way, you know, especially when those patterns exist across culture. So while people do definitely use religion for cohesion, order, and to have a father figure, you know, so what? You know, the group cohesion can be more like a compass. A path is a form of protection, one could argue. And maybe the order is a reflection of an inner order or structure of how we need to live based on what we are. And maybe the father figure is a representation of a man who possesses qualities a man needs to survive and flourish, given what a man is, qua man. Like I always say, if groundhogs could tell stories, they would tell stories of a groundhog who possesses qualities it needs to live well as a groundhog. The quintessential groundhog, the greatest groundhog story ever told. And of course, religion can be used as an avoidance strategy, but that's not religion's fault. It's more culturally incidental than anything else. If it was only an avoidance strategy, as I was saying before, then, you know, different religious practices would be chaotically different, but they're more similar than different. Baptismal ceremonies, you know, communion type ceremonies, alchemy and the Catholic Mass sure have a lot in common. You know, Edinger goes through how you can, in a sense, just superimpose alchemy onto therapy and psychological growth, and makes a lot more sense. And yeah, speaking of that, the hero's journey, right? Elaborated on very well by Joseph Campbell. So for Jung, these religious processions and the symbols behind them point to something objective about the structure of the psyche. Not only is the psyche a fact, it's an objective fact. Don't make me read paragraph like 5-9. in answer to Job. So the disagreement is really religion is nothing beyond a wish fulfillment versus religion is evidence of the metaphysical nature of the psyche. So Freud and Jung really do agree on a lot. Jung wants to take it a step further. Freud says, well, that's mysticism. And Jung's reply is, well, yes and no. Yes, with an if, and no with a but. Now, maybe you can see the split here. A split as old as time, a song as old as rhyme. Mind and body. Many such cases throughout history, notably Plato and Aristotle. Big exception there. We'll get to it, which is Jung, Freud, respectively. Also a big exception. But it's truth versus fact. Truth is up here, facts are down here. Never the twain shall meet. I said that right. Jung, the rationalist, saw truth over facts. Freud, the empiricist, saw facts is more fundamental than truth. The integration philosophically would be both, which is what Aristotle taught us to do at length. Because, of course, Aristotle didn't deny the universals of Plato, only where they come from. What is their substance? Likewise, I would say Jung is an empiricist. He doesn't deny the facts of Freud. He only puts them together based on patterns that he documented quite extensively. He is an empiricist, and he's something else too. And you can disagree with those conclusions, but you can't say he's not an empiricist. Of course, it goes both ways, though, because Freud never denied symbols exist and they can be useful. He actively used them, from themes from fairy tales and myths, stuff like that. He says so explicitly. So it comes down to what aspect of the psyche you're emphasizing, which is my point. There's a lot of overlap here, and it's our problem that we see them this way as mutually exclusive. Jung mind, Freud body. Now, Freud and Jung, of course, didn't see the overlap either that well. Obviously, they split. I'd argue, Jung saw it more than Freud did, as Aristotle saw that overlap more than Plato. But what I'm saying is that since their deaths, we haven't brought them closer together. We've separated them even more, mostly through, straw man and in-group signaling. And no, you can't just use psychoanalysis sometimes and psychoanalytic other times. That's not an integration. You can't just go decode the hidden sexual trauma in your dreams on Tuesday and then go to your narrative therapy on Wednesday. It's better than scrolling Twitter, but that's the therapeutic equivalent of co-parenting. There's going to be a lot of mixed messages in there, but we'll get to how to resolve this split psychologically in a bit. One way modern psychology perpetuates this split is in its tendency to think in opposites. A common example is with temperaments, what we call personality. To be more introverted, you need to be less extroverted. To be more thinking, less feeling. To be more Jungian, you need to be less Freudian. But this doesn't make any sense. How could seeing religion as a potential defense not make you more clear on how to use it as a guidance, per the example? How could getting better at identifying what you feel not make you a better thinker? How could becoming more aware of what's going on outside of you not make you more clear on what's going on inside of you? And vice versa. And just a hint, I guess, at a resolution here is it's going to come down to your intention behind the introversion. For instance, is it out of reality avoidance or reality acceptance? Are you reading that book to learn or to avoid rejection? Probably it's both, right? And it comes down to how you differentiate that intention, which is when Freud and Jung really start to come back together. We'll get to it. Another instance of this split is mechanism versus teleology. Freud often looks at the symptoms and asks, well, why did this happen? What caused it? What event or conflict? Jung cares more about where the symptom is going, what it's trying to accomplish, what possibility is being implied. Your behavior is determined less by your past than it is your future, as it were. And of course, they both, focus on how you're perpetuating that issue now. But, again, it's just where the emphasis is. Obviously, these aren't contradictory questions either. what caused the resentment usually informs what you need to do to resolve it. You know where you're going, you know where you've been, so you know where you're going. If your car breaks down, you need to know why it broke down so you know where to go. Do I need to go to the muffler shop? And a complete psychology would need both. You need to know both where the symptom, came from and what it's trying to accomplish. And of course, that informs how you go about accomplishing that. Otherwise, you're only seeing part of the picture. That's kind of like how two different people can look at the same prominent court case and come to two completely different conclusions about the case. It's like they're looking at two different cases, two different realities, right? That's a popular phrase for a reason. There's tons of implications here about the cultural split going on, which we won't get into, right? My focus is the individual psyche, the monad of culture. And this is why psychology remains fragmented, because each school only looks at part of the problem. Behavior therapies focus on behavior, psychodynamic on the causes, Jungian's focus on meaning, somatic on the body, humanistic on the experience, and each one is grabbing a piece of the elephant and thinks they're looking at the whole animal. But because this Freud and Jung split was never resolved, everyone now needs to choose a side. Psychology becomes, rather than becoming more unified over time, it becomes more tribal, more fragmented, more specialized. One therapist will say it's about your trauma or your thoughts, your nervous system, or you're attached incorrectly, to the wrong archetype, or it comes down to your attachment style. But it's less, it just makes psychology seem way more complicated than it is. But it's really less complicated than that. It's less complicated than it feels, only the field has never resolved this split at its foundation. This is why the worst Freudians hate Jung and the worst Jungians hate Freud. That means you're split. You can only see the world from one perspective. It's not Freud versus Jung, it's both. You don't ridicule pattern recognition as magical thinking because patterns are inevitable. So when you don't acknowledge how you arrive at them, you become the high priest of unfalsifiable claims, as if resolving a neurosis is like the denouement of an Alfred Hitchcock movie. Cary Grant has this flash, this revelation of a repressed memory, and now he's free to love again. Freud's overall approach was correct, revolutionarily correct in that respect. But Freud thinking everything is about sex is like Thales thinking everything is water. But, Thales is my hero. And Jungians, of course, need to realize it is often about sex, the humiliating stuff, what you don't want to talk about, the relationship with your mom. And maybe that's why you're distracting yourself with all that chakra work, because when you minimize sex, you start to sleep with your patients. Of course, the mystic Lapis guy succumbs to groupies, right? Male yoga instructors, especially the guru kind, their whole thing is molesting women. Because what must come first before the trauma, before the archetype? What's in between you and that content? It's your relationship with it. Specifically, your relationship with the feeling you have about it. It's your feeling. Psychologically, that's metaphysical. It's not whether you were abused. It's not whether you saw Christ. It's about your relationship with the abuse and the Christ figure. Two people can have the same religious experience. One turns it into wisdom, the other dogma. You need to see that emotional content, right? That intention behind what you're doing, so when reading the books becomes too much of an avoidance, even for you, at least see yourself doing it, like Hasselhoff and the cheeseburgers. And that's why your anamnesis doesn't need to be accurate. People think when they go through their experiences, they think, oh, well, I'm not sure if it really happened this way. Well, it doesn't matter. It's your relationship with whatever you think happened. None of those memories are accurate. And thinking they are, is again, magical thinking. Freud and Jung keep looking at the content, is what I'm saying. And some of it's totally valid. But when you improve your relationship with that content, you begin to see the real value in it and why some of it is maybe less than important, can be discarded, or at least you can group a lot of it together. You need to simplify, and that's the integration. And that's when you really begin to see the quite specific whys and hows of therapy. And it explains how both Freud and Jung are correct and incorrect. They both establish their concepts, but what's your relationship with that trauma, with that Christ figure? What's your intention? When you stay home to read books on a Saturday night, parse through that emotional content, get more clear, familiar with it. When you do that, you even yourself out a bit. So when that unconscious content comes up, in whatever form it happens to take, you're more able to see it and use it appropriately. You just have more comfort with it. And really, you're just creating a better relationship with yourself. As I was discussing in the previous video, when you're clear, psychologically, the action is right there. It just shows up for you. And it's the same for content. It's the same for insight. You're more likely to use both when you're secure. Sometimes there is symbolic content there. Sometimes you just have to look at the issue for what it is and sigh. And yeah, psychological growth is about deciphering where that line is. But I think there is symbolic content there with the sign. It's Sisyphus. Just saying. So it comes down to whether a Freudian will continue to be intellectually dishonest and keep calling Jung a mystic, and whether a Jungian will continue to use her seances as a way to distract herself from the fact that her, best friend took her boyfriend in high school. And yeah, I'm just not the cool girl. So I need to do all this dumb shit to make up for it, which, boy, it sure sums me up. For this reason and many others is why we take no prisoners when it comes to getting clear on that emotional content. First, you break down what emotions are, how they work, how you talk through them, which reveals what your unconscious pattern is that creates your symptoms, which shows you how to communicate that issue, how to put words to it in a way that develops a personality, an identity. So if you want to learn more about how to engage with that content, no matter its form, then get my book, The Therapy Manifesto, link in the description. Or if you want to work with me, I do free consultations. Join animus.com/schedule, link also in the description. And check out my lecture I did on Answer to Job, or just the book of Job. And I reference Answer to Job a lot, in Jung's Psychology and Religion. Very interesting and not boring video for you there. And I wish you all the joy and pain that comes from realizing you need to see the worst thing about you and integrate it.